This is an excerpt from said memoir. Valencia Street was howling. Its intersections were thriving with people, all of them looking for something different. The preppy marina set had invaded, setting itself up in a shameless bar called Blondie's. The neon sign pulsated, and the interior of the bar was laid naked onto the sidewalk. There was no concealing wall, but rather vast open windows, letting the drunken contents of the bar display themselves to the innocents walking by. Tight miniskirts and breasts pushed up like fresh cupcakes for the customers to admire, to salivate over. Men in their crisp button-down with oversized collars, gelled hair slicked back into crusty layers, descending black waves on a frozen sea. Across the street, the worn-in jeans of guitar players and record collectors brushed against each other in a dim haunt called Casanova. The lighting was brutal, and a DJ in the corner with a fedora cap spun his scratchy 45s. The sounds of girl group, harmonies, and fuzzy Nuggets-era guitar riffs filled the air. Men with black leathers strewn about their shoulders, pumping beers and mixed drinks down their throats. The post-happy hour demise, the journey into a groggy night of bouncing from one dive to the next. The female bartender was tall and burlesque, her dark hair sculpted back like a 50s pinup. She burst out of her clothes, her arms thick and healthy, sensuous full breasts, and paramount hips sitting upon sturdy legs capable of birthing a litter. She looked at us with disgust because we couldn't help but lose ourselves in her iconic stature and an Amazonian sex goddess who served us drinks. On and off the streets, people were eating like madmen, ducking their heads into sit-down restaurants and takeaway cafes. It was Friday night and everyone was free. And those who weren't free were making money off the weekend spenders. Everyone needs bartenders, taxi cabs, waiters, and street hustlers. The bodegas exploded. Beer, cigarettes, chewing gum, whiskey, condoms, the lottery. On one corner, a gallery selling the fine art for the mentally challenged. On the next corner, a joint selling crepes. Further down, a man selling crack. Even further, a hustler selling his dick. Cameron, my bandmate, motioned me down the road. He pointed to Mission Street. We're going that way, man. We inched our hooves down the road into the filth of Mission and 16th. It was black and Latino and white and dirty, and as wonderful as it was unsettling. A homeless man sitting by the entrance to the train station, trying to make sense out of an addict who, with spit dripping from the side of his cracked face, was trying to make sense of a midnight preacher up in a soapbox, blurting the word of distant gods through his megaphone. Cam had heard from someone that someone was throwing a party down in an art gallery. It all sounded typical. We walked to the place right off 15th. And there were folks spread about the main floor looking at little pieces of art hung up on the walls, installed in the corners and projected upon painted surfaces. There was a postcard announcing the arrival of the event, its reason for being, and all of the artists involved. There were probably 1,000 of these events happening all over the city at the same time. A bunch of artists grouped together, appreciate each other's work and passion, sleep with each other a little bit, then decide it's time for the world, their friends, to gaze upon their magnificent creations. The art opening is a contrived event. Show your art in a thick blast of hysteria for one big night. Lots of people might show up, but they come and their thoughts are enthralled by other lesser concerns, shaking hands with known friends, catching the eyes and phone numbers of attractive strangers, and squeezing their way to the front of the line before all of the free wine runs out. No one takes themselves more seriously than these people at the art openings. There's something to prove. You can see it in their forced smiles and eagerness to talk over you, to make a point, to enact a declaration, a thesis concerning man's wretched and wrought existence, a heated pontification on the future of the left that threatens to melt the oils and rubbers and acrylics right off the fucking walls. And they do this for no other reason than to get laid, to get adored by your eager eyes, to wet the drunken loins of the person holding your hand, to wrap the whole damn party around their id. And that desire to get laid is nothing but a gross mix of insecurity and arrogance that permeates any art world with a grain of salt. Everyone is scared. Everyone needs reassurance. It is Friday, and they're not quite sure if they are free, and so they drink. Cameron was good at the scene. He charmed girls because he was handsome and gregarious, and I stood by his side scaring them away because I was brooding and standoffish, thinking of lyrics, thinking of chords, possible gigs. He was talking to someone, and we were in a side room. There were little itty-bitty pieces of someone's naked self-expression all around us. And I believe that Cameron was talking of architecture. The girl didn't care. All she could picture was this hard, well-groomed and arty, but manly phallus inside of her. And when they were done, she would want him to say, "I love you." And all Cameron could think of was doing it and wanting to love her, but knowing that he couldn't. Cam didn't have to be romantic, though. He was so glowing, attractive from inside out, that he was safe for being unromantic and keeping the flocks at bay with arrogant turns of his head, those long locks drooping over his eyes and shielding him from the eager glances of hungry girls. But he couldn't help it. Something inside of him was so fertile and boyish, he had to tell them. He had to reveal his hobbies and daydreams to them. I play bass. I surf. and all they wanted was his cock with a promise ring on it. I was sipping a drink, leaning in and out of his conversation, attempting to smile while looking at her, looking at him, and all those little pieces of self-expression littering the edges of the room. There's something rumbling beneath us. The hardwood floors were shaking. At first, we thought it was a subway zipping under us in cavernous tunnels, but the rumbling didn't go away. It just grew in its resonance, almost shaking our feet and vibrating our legs as we stood there. As they talked about architecture when they were really talking about sex. Is that the fucking subway? Cam interjected. No, it's downstairs, I told him. Something awoke in us. Cameron and I ran from the room into the hallway, following its decorated curves to a dark staircase, which led to the basement. As we slunk down the stairs, the sound grew. It was like we were reaching the center of the earth. It was overwhelming. I wanted to shit myself and vomit. I tossed my drink into a corner. We fell into the room. Ahead of us was a modest crowd, people transfixed by an epic sound. They were possessed, rolling ever so slowly back and forth on their heels. We joined them. In front of us, a small stage. There was a screen printer's work light sitting in the corner of the stage, and everything else was black. The lighting created a strange glow around the two men who were up there. They had big guitars and rows of pedals. Behind them were amplifiers lined up like a backdrop of skyscrapers in the financial district. They weren't playing silly folk songs or intelligent pop or grand post-rock architectures. They were constructing dizzying claps of thunder. The amp shot forth bombs, detonating in our faces, rearranging our thoughts, disturbing the very firing of synapses in our brain. Each moment was like constant amnesia, utter disorientation. What do you hold on to in music when you can't hold on to chords and melodies or movements, but can only follow the burst of sheer terror one after another, shattering lightning bolts, no, not even notes, but just wild sound, a pair of nodes attached to your temples, buzzing with epileptic shock therapy through your burning skin, turning your brainstem into a wild beachfront bonfire. The men's bodies arched back and forth as they tugged anguish from these guitars. It was like slow, loving, brutal sodomy. The sculpted body of a wise old man cradling a subsequently collapsing the tight fertile rectum of a newly discovered sailor. The young boy's eyes burst, first with shock and pain, then he whips up violently, his cock a flushing rocket launcher spraying waves of relentless cum. My ears were moist. I thought they were bleeding, or that some deeply lodged cavity of essential mucus had burst deep inside of me and released its contents. The DNA of one soul, linking from the Pandora channels of my ear canals.